NIcol, but WMST and I work together on our TIA projects. And um, my major is transnational media studies and minor is educational studies.
All right, so we'll just jump right in. So many of you here have probably heard the statistics about girls and women, about struggles with body image, self-esteem, and gender disparity. And when you combine those issues with circumstances like low-income families or lack of access to positive exposure, these things have negative effects on young women. Like one girl whose name was Aaliyah. She was 11 years old when I was a teen, and Aaliyah really struggled with low self-esteem. Whenever she would sit, she'd always try to hide her legs because her pants were too short. And when she would walk, her head was always down. And she was at such a low point, she confided in me and told me that she was even cutting herself. And I'm a teen, so I try to encourage her. And I followed the example of giving that I learned from my mom. And I went home and gathered some of my outgrown clothes and gave those to her. And there was just such a dramatic change in the way that she walked, in her smile, just from this simple act of showing care. And while I didn't have a lot of quantitative things to give Malia, what I did give her through showing care had a large qualitative value in her life, and now in the lives of many other girls and young women in the DC area through Heart of Tabitha Foundation. That's the venture that I'm working with TIA. We help young women who are ages 14 to 21. We provide essentials such as clothing, school supplies, also educational and career preparation opportunities to job shadow, mentorship, and more. And our newest initiative is a focus on health and body image, and most recently on mental health. And our goal is to give these young women opportunities, not just to be beneficiaries of our services, but also to serve others as well. We believe that circumstances should not have to inhibit somebody from helping someone else. So we really try to provide opportunities for them as well. So we've been able to serve about 150 girls, and we'd like to triple that in the next 2 years and help thousands, hopefully, in the next 5 to 10 years.
So I'm founder of the Almastad Alliance, which is a foundation that works to reconnect African American youth to their ancestral roots in West Africa through heritage travel experiences. So if you've ever heard of Birthright Israel, I don't know if anyone has, but it's similar to that model in that our goal is to provide subsidized and free travel experiences to youth, because we believe that, thinking about my own experiences as a young person who was African American, and specifically thinking about the fact that I was born in Sierra Leone but came to the United States as a 2-year-old, and ever since I came to the United States, it was only last year that I was able to go back to the continent. And as I think about how the United States, as a Black young woman in the United States, thinking about how my identity has not been supported in many ways, and how drastically different I feel having a connection to the continent. I think that that's something that's so valuable for young people, to be able to say, I know where I come from and I have a connection to that. So that's what the Amistad Alliance works to do. Our current initiative is a Back to Africa Fund, so that sponsors young adults who are passionate about tracing their roots back to the continent. And then the project that we hope to begin in the near future is our own Birthright program that would take groups of students, young people together to the continent, different places in West Africa that African Americans trace their ancestry to.
Okay, so I co-founded Unravel Books with Judea Mixon, and Unravel is a subscription service that addresses difficult issues that often go unaddressed in K-3 education. Sorry, I wrote down the parts because public speaking makes me very nervous. But so research shows that children are exposed to complicated issues like race, gender, mental health, disability, and often inhibit those identities. And so they have questions about these topics from an early age. And because these topics can be complex or challenging to address, a lot of the time their questions go unanswered. And so Unravel helps adults to have information and resources to facilitate difficult conversations, but it also equips children with the skills and knowledge to be able to handle these issues in their day-to-day lives. And so so basically, this is our second year doing this. We were in TIA last year, and our pilot topic was on consent. And so we created a children's book and adult pamphlet, and then also a coloring book, which I have here if anybody wants to see it. So this is our children's book, and then a coloring book, and then we also have pamphlets. And so we learned. So we started doing this basically out of we were hanging out and talking, and then realized there's a lot of issues that we didn't really have the language or skills to. Oh, we had it when we were younger, but we didn't. Sorry, we didn't. We learned about like how to address a lot of these things when we got to Colgate, but we wish we had those skills and knowledge when we were younger, or that they were inside of us, but they had been better empowered when we were younger. And so we were talking one day, and we wanted to make children's books, and then we applied to TIA as a space to enable us to do that. And
So earlier I talked a little bit about what inspired me to start Heart of Tabitha Foundation. I talked about Malia, but I also want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience and why Heart of Tabitha is personal for me. I would consider myself as someone who comes from the demographic of young women that Heart of Tabitha serves. From a broken home, raised by a single parent, with not a lot of money. However, there were many organizations that I got involved in that helped my mindset. I talked a little bit about circumstances, and those organizations provided some of the opportunities that Heart of Tabitha provides as well. And I think that one of the key factors, yes, we want the girls who are involved to have this exposure and have educational opportunities and bridge that gap from their circumstances to what's available to them. But even more importantly to me and to my team members is this mindset of I can do, my circumstances do not define me, who I am, who I can be, what I can do, and that's what we want to instill in every single girl who comes through our program. And that's what the organizations that I was involved in helped do for me. And the only thing that we ask of the young women who are involved is that they pay it forward. It's simple that they pay it forward.
So the inspiration, the vision for the Amistad Alliance, I think it's something that has always been within me, given my experiences as someone who was born on the continent, but then has lived my whole life in the diaspora, and being surrounded by a community of other Black young people who, some of them were from first-generation immigrant families, but some of them trace their roots as far as they can see in the United States. But the idea came for me on a trip to South Africa through Colgate, an extended study class, and that was my first time back on the continent, and that was I think I would say my first time on the continent, because as a 2-year-old, I didn't really know anything. And so we were just talking in the class. Well, a group of students were talking about Birthright Israel, actually, because there are a lot of Jewish students on the program, and the kind of opportunities that gave Jewish people who trace their heritage to Israel, and like the ability to connect. And I was like, wow, what if we could have something like that? Like, what if we had the ability to trace our ancestry or see our roots and see ourselves in connection to the continent? And that was at a time when I was reading a lot of books like Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeCruz, and I was reading Learning to Remember the Things That We've Learned to Forget by Dr. Cynthia Dillard, and just thinking about like how this idea of like a transnational Black community that in a lot of ways exists intellectually but hasn't necessarily been given the space to exist physically, especially thinking about people. So I am now, at the time when I was traveling, I was a sophomore in college, but these ideas have always been in my mind since I was in middle school and high school, and thinking about people who may never come to college, may never have the opportunity to study abroad, but still want this connection, and how do we make this happen? Because a lot of Black people didn't ask to come here, but don't have the opportunity to go back. So that's where the inspiration came for me. And after that time, I went to South Africa, and then a month later I went to the Gambia for an internship, and then a month later I went to Ghana to study abroad. So that was all within the space of like a year, and I was like, wow, that just seeing all of the ideas that I had like always thought I understood, and people that I had romanticized, and ideas of like back to Africa, but like being able to actually experience that for myself really made it real in a way that was not like, oh my goodness, like Africa's so great and like all we need to do is go back, but like giving me another outlet to like see my Blackness and like have it validated in certain ways, even though it wasn't perfect. I think that is like something that, for obviously not all Black people want to connect to the continent, but for the people who do, especially for young people, I think that's really can be a transformative experience, and and the Amistad Alliance wants to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And so the context for our project is we live in a world where so many violences are normalized, and so we had a lot of things that each of us had experienced differently when we were younger, and we also recognized that a lot of resources like children's books, children's movies, media on TV is racist and sexist and classist, and so we wanted to create content that was subverting those. When we first went to TIA, we were originally wanted to do it where it was explicitly we're making materials that address issues of social justice, and then our mentors basically said social justice is too much like a risky word that will make people feel like turned off by the materials, and they won't even be open to it. And so we had to change our language to kind of address, but we also wanted to make it so that these materials are not still censoring like white wealthy people, because when we were growing up, that was a lot of the resources that were out there. And so basically we started out with consent because that was something that we both wanted to talk about and equip children with the skills and language to address. But then we also have a list of many other topics that we want to address, ranging from colorism, police brutality, mental health, gender fluidity, and the platinum rule, which is basically instead of treat others as you would want to be treated, it's treat other people as they want to be treated, and also masculinity. And those are kind of some of the topics that we are hoping to address next. So the inspiration kind of came from, we have these things that we really wanted to know more about when we were younger, and we were frustrated that these aren't being addressed as much as they need to be in most K-3 spaces. So
I'll talk a little bit about why TIA has been helpful. So my case is a little different because I started Heart of Tabitha before coming to Colgate. But since joining TIA, they've helped me Well, first of all, the mentors that I have, several of them have backgrounds in nonprofits specifically, and so they're able to give me more knowledge on how exactly I go about, like technically and practically developing the organization and causing it to grow. So one, the knowledge that they provide has been really helpful, and not only just with my mentors, but with the presentations that we have at each monthly meeting about branding or building a team and things of that nature. Those are good knowledge that I can have and also take back to my team. Also, it's really cool to be able to be in a group with other student entrepreneurs who are trying to be innovative and start their new ideas. And I just want to encourage everyone here, if you have an idea, a vision of something that you want to start, it all starts just as an idea, and then you can take the steps that make it a reality. And TIA has been helpful for many students to be able to do that. And even in the course of being in TIA, your venture idea could change. It's happened in my group. One student came up with this great idea, and then came to find out that there's another organization, or company rather, with the same exact name that does the same thing and already has like 30 employees, so she has to start from scratch. And that happens, but you're in a space where you're surrounded by people who are invested in making any idea that you want to bring to fruition happen. So TIA has been helpful for me, and I encourage anybody who might be interested to really consider it.
So when I applied to TIA, or when I was considering applying to TIA last year, I was kind of hesitant because my understanding of TIA was that it's for like for-profit ventures that are like really trying to like make money and all these different things. And I didn't know where my organization fit in because we're not for-profit. And at that time, like I had a vision, but I didn't know how to realize it. So I was like, okay, let's just go ahead and see what this looks like. So I joined TIA, and even though there are more for-profit ventures than there are not-for-profit ventures, I think that the space has still really been helpful to me, to understand, okay, I know what the vision is, and I know like what my ideologies are, and I know where I'm coming from, but how do I make this something that other people also understand? And as much as vision drives a venture, I also need to understand like how to put it on paper and what a business plan is and like what a funding plan is and how to communicate to other people what I'm trying to do, because as much as like the success, I think a lot of people have similar ideas, and a lot of people have, not for the Homicide Alliance. The Homicide Alliance is pretty much like not that many people are doing it or thinking about doing it, but a lot of people have similar ideas in general. But what differentiates people is like how you then communicate that to others and how you get people to like be committed to your idea because of the passion that you exhibit, but also like your plan and your structure and the fact that this is something that can succeed, and you make that clear to people. So I think that has been really helpful for me in TIA to see that I've gotten a lot of different feedback, and oftentimes like mentors do give conflicting feedback, but I think that's really great because then it comes back to me and it comes back to, okay, like people will have different ideas of what you're doing, but what is it that you actually want this thing to be, and how do you connect to people that also understand your vision? So that's been really helpful.
So yeah, I won't repeat what they said because it's been helpful also in everything that Sharon said for us. I think there's also been, like, if you are thinking about going into TIA, like, it's important to recognize that classism and racism and sexism still exist in that space. And so, when we were creating our venture, there was still a lot of ways in which it made us figure out how are we going to be firm in kind of what we believe and what we want this to stand for, and not have to compromise that for the sake of making profit or making money, but while also recognizing the need to have money to make it happen. And so TI helped us most, like I think the biggest help has been with the seed grant that they have, and then also with helping us to develop kind of the business plan, which I had no experience with before going into it. So
does anyone have any questions? We'll just take a moment for a little Q&A.
For each of you, thanks for the amazing projects. I guess going forward, like what's your vision going forward from what you've accomplished and like what do you want most to do next or more? Or what's in this, what you are planning right now to do what's next? Okay.
Well, my vision for Heart of Tabitha is really expansive. I can see it really being an organization that has chapters in different cities, different states, and even internationally. And it's a process. It's always a step-by-step thing. And right now, what my mentors are helping me with is growing the board in terms of creating an advisory board and bringing more people and ideas into what's already exists. So that's kind of the right now next step.
Okay, so the Amistad Alliance, the long-term vision, like I mentioned, is to create our own experience that would like bring together a group of young people, and the group of young people would go together to a location in West Africa. So developing our own trips. But where we are at right now is developing a fund in which, until we get the resources and the connections that we need to actually facilitate our own trips for motivated young people who just want to have the experience, to whether partially or fully fund them to go on independent trips, either with organizations that already exist, for-profit travel groups exist, or on their own. But my personal next step is just talking to as many people as possible about the Amistad Alliance, because it is something that I think, being at Colgate specifically, it's been kind of hard for me because the Colgate community is not my target audience. And as much as the feedback from TIA is helpful, a lot of the mentors in TIA are not my target audience. So connecting more to that target audience and seeing in like what a motivated student, like what are they someone who is motivated and passionate about Africa, what are they actually willing to do to receive funding? Would they write an essay? Would they like do a service project? Like what does it actually look like, and how do we tailor something that benefits the people that we want to benefit, but also reaches them? How do we develop that reach unless we talk to people? So yeah, that's my next step or current step.
So for Unravel Books, we have a few different things. The first is with our existing material, we want to translate it so that it's accessible in more languages, and also figure out ways to make it accessible, not just in terms of reading and speaking, but to figure out how this information can still be communicated and through a range of different abilities. And then we're also hoping to make it into an animation that can be on YouTube, and we're figuring out how to make that work. And then we also, like I mentioned before, have many other topics that we want to create content for and work with other people also to make content. So those range from colorism to masculinity to Black Lives Matter and police brutality, gender fluidity, ableism, a lot of different. We have so many topics.
Is there someone else? Yeah, go ahead.
So I have my question is, and I can late, so forgive me if you already answered it, but the nature of these projects seem different than other TIA projects that I've run into in the past, and I wonder if that is just my misperception that you three of your projects seem anomalous to me, that you have a misunderstanding, or have you sort of pushed the limits of TIA? It sounds a little bit compared with talking about the mentor as not being the audience, how has, I guess, what has been the, the interaction of your project and TIA, and how TIA may have expanded or changed in response to trying to accommodate stuff like things like your endeavors that you're.
So for me, I think it's a question of like, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but like the chicken and the egg, I don't know. Anyway, so like a lot of times I think about TIA as like, what do Colgate students think about in some ways, and like how does that shape who is in the room? So like if a lot of Colgate students are thinking about things that are for profit, things that look like technology, things that look like whatever they look like, that also like determines who is in TIA and how that space develops, and the interpretation of what that space, like what TIA is able to offer and who it caters to. So I think that, like, going back to what I was saying about when I first like did my interview with TIA, and I was like, is this even something that fits the model that you work with? And they were like, yes, of course. Like, we are completely open to whatever. Like, our mentors are from a wide variety of like backgrounds. They do different things, but it's also like certain student ventures come in with certain ideas, and as much as TIA like helps to shape them, it doesn't change them from what they are. But I think that as people like us take those steps to be involved in spaces like that, like TIA, it does like change the idea of what TIA has the ability to cater to. Because if we all came in and no one was able to offer support for us, then it'd be like, maybe we should try to connect to more people who like are able to offer support to people who aren't necessarily thinking about like how to develop a website or an app. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
So yeah, for our venture, it was when we first did it, they were not like our mentors were trying to completely change what we wanted to do with our project. So we told them we want to make educational materials that address topics of social justice, and they told us maybe you should make like a video game or something that, and basically they wanted to make it so that we weren't addressing the main topics and heart of what we actually wanted to be doing. And so we had to really know, kind of like, it made us have to stop a lot, and after the sessions, like really we would spend hours just talking to each other about what we really want to be doing and how are we going to take kind of the advice they're giving us, but also stay true to what we wanted to be doing. And so so we kind of listened to some of what they were saying, but then also did what, like, at the end of the day, what we wanted our project to be. And after we had created these, then they started thinking, oh, okay, maybe they actually have, they're onto something and that we can also get behind. So it took a little bit of demonstrating to them that like we know how to make this and we can do it. And then in terms of, so that at the end of TIA, there's Entrepreneur Week, where you pitch your venture and different people are investing in your venture. And I didn't really understand how that worked, and neither of us we didn't really know how that worked when we were kind of pitching to people. And so, but when somebody invests in your company, then they also have a vested interest in what happens with that company because they're putting money behind it. And so that was another thing we really had to think through, is how do we make it so that if people are funding it, they don't change the course of what this is and then censor what we want to be saying and the topics we want to be talking about. So, does that answer your question?
And fortunately, I haven't faced much resistance. I think in general, my mentors and the people who I've talked to in TIA about part of Tabitha generally accept the vision of uplifting and empowering these young women. And I understand like the resistance and setbacks that Sharon and Hannah's organizations have faced. But I think it's been a little different with Heart of Tabitha, and also the fact that we had already been in existence before coming to TIA. There were things to show this model of what we're doing actually works and has an impact. So there was evidence to show that this is what we're doing and why we believe it. Any other questions?
My question is complicated, and it's for Sharon. Sorry. Little bit off the business topic. You've compared the Amistad Alliance to Birthright, and I know I'm going to make you talk about it. And I'm curious as to how Amistad Alliance might differ from Birthright, and that Birthright has been widely critiqued as a very colonial and oppressive practice due to its the occupation of Palestine. So I'm wondering, is there any kind of reciprocal relationship that you aim to have, or like what's the differences there?
Yes. So in terms of the reason I compare to Birthright is because like at the foundation of like giving a free trip, that is assigned like to a place that someone traces some kind of connection to. That's like the extent to which there is a connection between like the Amistad Alliance and Birthright Israel. Because I think that yes, in a lot of ways like Birthright Israel is problematic. And like the reason, from what I hear, like the purpose of Birthright Israel is just to like ensure that the Jewish community remains strong, so that they're like into like people continue to marry other Jewish folks. So like that is how Birthright is pitched to me when I hear about it from people who experience it, and it is a lot about like partying and just being able to experience that place without really any reflexivity about like how a person exists in a space that is, as much as like Black people can trace our ancestry to the continent, we have been distanced from it, and we do have experiences and privileges that do not that make it hard for us to just go into a space and say, this is my home, so I don't have to worry about like the way that I act in this place. And I'm very critical of that, and thinking about the Amistad Alliance in the future. It is still the idea of Amistad, which means friendship in Spanish, and alliance, which is like about building relationships. So it is about like, how do we develop travel experiences that are not just about being tourists and coming into a space as though we own it, or as though the way that we interact in that space doesn't have any effect on it, but how do we like come into a space and actually see the people who live there and speak to them and develop relationships that also continue and are informed by our different positions. So not just being like, oh yeah, we're gonna go see this place and this place and this place, and then like take pictures and buy things, but also like being critical of one of the spaces that we visit, and also like having, so the Amistad Alliance, the way that I'm hoping to structure the trips is that they're led by a community activist or scholar or leader who kind of talks to the group about how we're engaging with the space and the history of the space, and how our being there, what that means to the community, whether that means like we help do something, or whether that means we don't go somewhere, or that means we do go somewhere, but when we come back, we talk about that place. So because we haven't actually developed the trips yet, we don't know what that looks like forever. And because Africa is a continent and like everywhere is different, we don't know what that looks like in every space yet, but that is definitely something that we are critical of and thinking about as we develop our models.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question also goes to Sharon. I'm sorry for everyone, but you mentioned about helping, reaching out to African Americans who are interested in reconnecting to the continent, and I'm just wondering, what about what initiative do you think you would take to reach out to those African Americans who have like a stereotypical about Africa, like saying thinking about Africa is a dirty place, or it's always prone to wars. Like what initiative do you take to educate also African Americans about the continent? Because it's not just about reconnecting, but also knowing much about the continent. So
yeah. Thank you for that question. So I think it has, so there are two answers to that I think I can give, and they kind of relate to the Amistad Alliance, but kind of don't. So there are different types of like black, not different. I don't know how to word it, but like all Black people are not the same, and all Black people's perceptions of Africa are not the same. And in terms of the Amistad Alliance, there's a target audience who are not people who currently, at least like thinking about how we're moving forward in small steps. It's not people who think Africa is a country and Africa is like a dirty place and like all these different things. It is people who like in some ways are trying to engage with the continent in whatever way that means, and therefore like whether in reading books, like however they've been able to do that so far, are trying to educate themselves. And as the Amistad Alliance, what we do hope to do in the future is, especially when we develop our trips, is having like workshops with the students that talk about different topics, about whether it's Black identity or like what Africa is, all these different things. That is a part of the future of the organization. Developing workshops and like community, whatever you want to call it. But in terms of and I think that's also the issue in terms of like how do Black people perceive Africa because of the lack of education that there is largely about Africa in the United States in general, and because of the image that is portrayed of the continent. And like how do you do that? I think it is talking to people, and it is developing like educational experiences, and but it also is like being a person who is African, like also talking to people about what the continent looks like. And as more people go back, I think that's like the payoff of the Amistad Alliance is that like as students go, as young people go and experience, they also go back into their communities and talk about their experiences and talk about the fact that this place is not just what they've said it is, or like, oh yeah, people have houses, and like whatever the stereotypes have been in the past, like young people who go will also serve as educators in their communities. And that is again like the linking that the Amistad Alliance does. It's not just about having an experience in one place, but remembering and remaining connected to people that you meet in that place, and also bringing the ideas, the experiences, everything back with you to also educate your community. However that works.
Thank you.
Thank you.